Hello, welcome back to another video. Today's going to be a bit different. Today I wanted to talk about my university applications and how I got into UC Berkeley. A little bit different from my fashion hauls and my SF vlogs, but today I'll be unpacking literally everything that I did in high school in order to get here. So let's get started. A little bit about me. I was actually born in LA, but I grew up in Guangzhou, China, which is like this place right next to Hong Kong. I attended international school there at American International School of Guangzhou for literally my entire life, from pre-K up until my senior year. It's a little bit different than those people that applied in-state or in the US. It's also different from the mainland Chinese students that apply from China. So it's like a very niche population of international school kids in these major cities in China and Asia. Right now I go to UC Berkeley. It is my third year, but I'm graduating this fall as part of class of 2022 as a sociology major. I graduated high school in 2020, so this is exactly when the pandemic started, and then I'm graduating now, just 2.5 years later. I know for a fact that for international students, we have a rep of having all of these college counselors, these preparatory things that allow us to go to top schools here in the US, but I didn't have any of that, and I just did this entire process on my own. But I definitely had a lot of guidance from my brother, who had gone through the same process 10 years ago. I'll split up this video into a few different sections. So first I'll talk about my stats, and then I'll talk about my extracurriculars, and then lastly my essays. In my high school, we didn't offer AP courses, so we didn't have any advanced placement, and we had the IB system. For the IB system, we had to take 6 courses, 4 of which I did HLs, and then 2 of them were SLs. So my HL courses were biology, psychology, economics, and English, Lang and Lit. And then my SLs were French and math. So for these 6 courses, we didn't actually have a final grade when we first applied to college, so they were based off of predicted grades. My predicted was a 43 out of 45. My real score was a 42 out of 45. In addition to this predicted score that we had, we also had the normal high school GPA. My school did it on a 4.0 scale. Weighted GPA was a 4.17. For the UC application, it's a little bit different because they make you input all these grades for a UC GPA score. There's no plus or minus, so in the end, my grades were just all A's. I don't know how they calculated that on a UC GPA scale, but that's that. As for standardized testing, I actually hate standardized testing, and I'm not good at these tests. But I did do the SAT. I got exactly 1500, and I think that's most schools threshold for a good SAT score. A lot of Asian students get full scores or nearly perfect scores because of their prep courses and everything, but for me, I thought that 1500 was just enough, and I did submit that score. Back then, we also had SAT subject tests. I took 2 of these. So for the first one, I did math level 2, and I submitted a 780. Yeah, 780. Most STEM kids get 800 on those, but I am not a STEM kid. 780 was fine for me. And I also did a biology test, but I literally signed up for that really last minute, and I didn't study for it. So I got a 700, but I still submitted it. I think aside from academics, what made my application stand out was probably leadership positions and also community involvement for extracurriculars. For me, I had a lot of extracurriculars both in and out of school. Our graduating class was only 60 something people versus I guess 200 in other international schools in China. And then you can still compare that to public schools here in the US, where it's 500, 600, up to 1,000 kids. So it's really different. My school was quite small, so I had the chance of running in a lot of elections and a lot of chances for me to get these leadership positions. So for me in high school, I was part of the student council for 4 years, and I climbed my way up since grade 9. So I was literally a grade council secretary in grade 9, and then I went up to the grade council president, and then after that I was the executive council secretary again. And then in my final senior year, I made my way up until executive council president. After student council, I also did NHS, National Honor Society, and at my school you were allowed to apply to it if you met like the 4 pillar requirements in grade 10. So I did it for 3 years, but fortunately for me, I ran for president in grade 10 going into grade 11. So I was president for 2 years in NHS. And of course, as like an international student in Asia, you have to do like MUN. It's like the staple activity to go to. So I started MUN, Model United Nations, in 7th grade, and again climbed my way up. I've went to more than like 15-ish conferences during my time in high school, from grade 9 until grade 12, and I was school officer starting in grade 10. I was also in varsity volleyball at my school, but again, take it with a grain of salt because my school is literally made up of like less than 400 people in the entire high school. I was able to make it into varsity in my freshman year. For volleyball, we competed both regionally and also internationally. Our school was part of this association called APAC. There's about like 12 schools in the APAC association, and I met a lot of really cool people through that activity. So we've talked about like academic extracurriculars, my sport extracurricular in school, and I also did orchestra. So for orchestra, I was a violinist, again, the Asian like staple. I was part of Violin 1. I think I ended up on like the first desk for orchestra in both like the school orchestra and also the APAC varsity orchestra. I didn't do too much volunteering in school. I was just part of Habitat for Humanity for like 3 or 4 years, and we went on these like trips inside China to help like build houses and like shelter. But yeah, it was a really valuable experience. But most of my like volunteering or like community service comes through like being in leadership for a student council and also National Honor Society. Yeah, so those were my extracurriculars in school. But I also did a lot outside of school, but I'll split that up into like the summers between each grade. First off, in grade 9, so going from grade 9 to grade 10, I actually just attended a few summer camps, as most international students do. I actually attended one here at Berkeley for engineering. Very interesting. Got to live in Berkeley for a little bit. So that was like a taste of Berkeley. I also did a Stanford volleyball camp for about like 2 weeks. It was pretty enlightening. So for the following summer, between grade 10 and grade 11, I actually went on a language immersion camp in Paris. I was also a golf instructor at G Planet Driving Range in Guangzhou, so I got to be the assistant of the head coach. Also volunteered at Starkey, and that was like a hearing foundation where I helped install like hearing aids for the elderly and children. Next, my grade 11 summer was the most influential for me, and I wrote about it inside my application for my essays. For grade 11, I actually embarked on like a wine experience journey with my brother, who's a sommelier, and he has his own wine bar now. So I shadowed him for the entire summer where he was in Paris, and we went all over Europe. Went to like London, Amsterdam, Vienna, Paris, Bordeaux, like a lot of different places to check out like really cool wineries and to meet like his peers and like his connections. So I got to see all of that, and I got to include that in my application. That was my extracurriculars outside of school. Looking back, like in hindsight, I think my application was more on the well-rounded side. I didn't specifically like have a spike or what people would say would get you into a really, really good college like Stanford or Harvard. I didn't have that like one thing that I was super, super passionate about, except for like the wine experience. Obviously, like I did so many different things and I had so many activities. So it was a little bit different than how other people have like one spike in one specific area. On top of my extracurriculars, I also got a couple of awards from my school and also from other associations. So for the first one that I listed, it was an academic award for highest honor for all 8 semesters in AISG. And then I also got Outstanding Student Award in Social Studies. I got Outstanding Student Award in Science, Outstanding Award in Health and PE. And I also got ASG Leadership Award. So this is like, also this award was for one person in the entire school that made substantial change. Outside of school, I also got the award for Best Judge in ICJ for So Moon, I think 22 in 2019. I passed the ABRSM grade 8 piano test like a while ago, but I included that as well. Alright, so that was my stats and my extracurriculars in and out of school. Now for the juicy part. For my personal insight questions, or like the essays, I wrote about 4 different things that I'm pretty competent at in my life. Like every person has a creative side. It could be expressed in many different ways. Started off with, I must confess, I am a hoarder, saving ticket stubs, collecting restaurant matchboxes, blah blah blah. I connected that with how I traveled with my brother throughout Europe the summer of my junior year, going to senior year, and how we were going to launch our label of wine for the China market and helping him design all of these different things. I did photography, film, and also just like design in general. Then for the next question, I talked about how I've taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity. So this one, I also talked about traveling to Paris, but during a different time. It was during spring break instead of summer. And at that time, my brother was still at Le Cordon Bleu. I guess this is like my favorite essay that I've written back then. Basically, I linked attending a class at Le Cordon Bleu with my brother, shadowing him for a day, to how I like met all of these really influential people in the wine world during the summer. So here was when I like name dropped a lot of different people and a lot of places. So it showed like expertise in wine. Next part, I talked about significant challenge that I faced. So here was when I was talking about a moral question. My mom had undergone like a surgery, and I couldn't tell my brother about it. The reason I couldn't tell him was that my parents didn't want him to worry. So I was talking about the ethical, moral dilemma that I had at that time. This last essay, it's the question, what have you done to make your school or community a better place? I basically talked about my student council experience, going from like secretary of like the grade council up until like executive president in the executive council, and how I implemented like new marketing strategies, and also how I created our school's like Instagram handle for the student council where we could share different cool things. So that was like my background coming into UC Berkeley. I also was accepted to all the other UC schools I applied to. So that was like UCLA, UC San Diego, Irvine, and also Santa Barbara. I think Santa Barbara. But ultimately I chose Berkeley over LA. For my application, it's obvious that I was more on the well-rounded side. I did a little bit of everything. I was competent in like a lot of different areas, did a lot of different things, but I didn't have that one single spike, say in like robotics or like in psychology or something. Nowadays, if you want to get into college, it's a very tough journey through high school. Everything has to be perfect, but one thing I do encourage students to do is to have a spike or something that you're really passionate about that you can write about throughout your essay and show your dedication to that. Now that I'm graduating from Berkeley, I've realized what really fits me and what doesn't. Sometimes I do wish that I picked a school in LA where there's more like international school population, just so concentrated in like one city. I definitely got what I wanted out of college. Number one tip that I would give for applicants would be to do research on the school extensively and to get to know students that already attend that school and see whether that lifestyle fits you. There wasn't really like a person that I could talk to about the school, whereas for like USC, UCLA, I had a lot of connections to people who attended there, but ultimately I chose Berkeley, and I had to like find my way through this entire process of like moving here and like getting to know the school, going around, and how to like maximize your experience here. So it's definitely good if you have a point of contact for like the colleges that you want to apply to. There's a lot of things I didn't know about Berkeley before coming here, and in hindsight, yes, I will still choose Berkeley and maybe still like graduate early, but if I wanted like a different like college experience, I would have chosen maybe UCLA or another school elsewhere. But yeah, that's the end of the video. Yeah, I'm literally just like rambling from the top of my head for this video, but that's genuinely like my like thoughts on the application as like an international student from China. So yeah.